you barely even need to read the title of this to figure out what genre this is going to be about. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking the genre book tag. I was tagged to do this by the wonderful Victoria from What Victoria Read, and this is kind of a celebration about all of the favourite books that you have loved, books that you want to discover, the genres that you have been loving and the ones that you want to kind of focus on a bit more. Let's go and find out what mine are. So, question 1 is your favourite genres, and I don't think anybody is going to guess too far away from this. My favourite genre is contemporary adult romance. I am a huge fan of books that take place in the world that I am in now. I can't really picture other worlds. I kind of find it difficult to place myself in the action when it's happening there. But when you're talking about a book that's happening right here, right now, in the world that I live, experiences that I have lived through, things that I could see myself living through, that is absolutely my favourite thing. I also love a romance book because who doesn't love a good love story? Everybody loves to love a love story, and they are some of my favourite books to read. The next question is your least favourite genres, and I think I've spoken about this before, but horror is absolutely not my thing. I have a very weak disposition. I have a very weak stomach. I don't like to think about things like blood, gore, guts coming out of your stomach, legs being chopped off, like limbs being chopped off, heads being chopped off. I am absolutely not a fan of reading about horror and gruesome attacks and things like that. It's just not something that interests me. I always feel like the outlier of BookTube when I say this, but another genre that I just don't like, cannot get into, have tried it a couple of times, but it's just not my thing, is fantasy. Don't get me wrong, because I have tried fantasy a couple of times. I've given Six of Crows, I think, about 2, maybe 3 tries before I just said this isn't for me and gave it to a friend of mine. The Of Curses and Kisses book by Sandhya Menon, I definitely gave that a try, but it just did not work for me at all. I don't know what it was, because I know that there are some contemporary parts put into this book, but I think I was just focused too much on this is a fantasy book. It's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Even though I love Beauty and the Beast, there is a kind of a fantastical element to it. I just couldn't get into it, unfortunately. And I really do wish that I could, because as I said, Beauty and the Beast is one of my favourite fairy tales. I've loved the other Sandhya Menon books that I have read. I don't know what it is. I couldn't get into it. Question 3 is a genre that you want to try, and there are a couple of things that I really want to dip my toes in. The first one is historical romance. I haven't read any, and I mean any. I haven't even read Pride and Prejudice, even though I said months ago that was one that I needed to try out. I know everybody got onto the historical hype train when Bridgerton came out on Netflix on Christmas Day, I think it was. Haven't watched it. A couple of friends have told me that it's something that I would be really interested in, because it's kind of a cross between Downton Abbey and Gossip Girl, which are 2 series that I really enjoyed. I don't know what it is, but I haven't watched it yet. And I know as well that Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts has talked about Juliette Marillier and Tessa Dare, who write a lot of historical romance fiction. So when I do get into the genre, I know where to go for recommendations, and I know what books I should be picking up. I just haven't gotten around to starting them yet. Another one that I want to try, and that I haven't read a lot of at all, is literary fiction. I have read a few of them. Like, I've tried The Midnight Library, which felt very literary fiction to me. I have read The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. That definitely felt like it was a more literary fiction book than a historical fiction or women's fiction or anything like that. There's one that I've got on my shelf that I really want to try. And I know that it's a very divisive book, and I know that the topic of it is very difficult to stomach, especially if you've been in the situation that the book develops on. I've had the book since about last August, and that's when it was kind of starting to pick up traction on BookTube. And it is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I've heard that it can be very divisive. I've heard you either love it or hate it. I've heard it's a very difficult read. But I think it's one that I want to give a try. There's a couple of people that, when I put this one up in a haul, they said that it was a really interesting book. And they said that it's one that I should definitely try out. Something else that I really want to try and sink my teeth into is books in verse. I've read a lot of those recently. So I have read 3 that I have done in a Books and Brews video. That was The Black Flamingo, Clap When You Land, and Toffee. I've also read by the same author of Toffee, Sarah Crossan. I've also read Here Comes the Beehive. I think I've also read We Come Apart, which is a book that she wrote with Brian Connaughton. So I have got some experience with books that are written in verse. It's just something that I haven't got a lot of experience in, and it's definitely something that I need to start reading a bit more because I know that I've really enjoyed them. Question number 4 is a genre that you don't want to try. And like I've said before, horror. I know that what's going to be on the page is just absolutely not going to be my thing. I know that when we're getting into serial killer ideals, when we're getting into descriptions of how bodies are found, descriptions of murders that are taking place, how the killer has actually carried out the murder, that's not my thing. That is not for me. Question number 5 is a genre that you're not sure about. So it's one that you've read before and you've had a bit of up and down situations with it. For me, this is thrillers, kind of for the same reason that I don't like horror. I don't like very graphic descriptions of violence, murder, all that thing. So when you're reading a thriller book and it's about a murder mystery and they bring in descriptions of what the body is like, descriptions of attacks that may have happened on them, not my kind of thing. I don't really enjoy reading that. However, what I do enjoy reading is going from the initial clues about the case and gathering more evidence and finding out a lot more about it to when you get to the whodunit and when you get to the end and you find out what happened. When I'm reading a thriller book, I really love to try and piece it together myself and to kind of go back over the pages and say, well, we know this, and this. And we know that this person was here and this person was there and they were here. So how do I put all of these together? Kind of like that board that you see on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There are so many thriller books that I have completely loved, mainly because they've blown me away with the big reveal. I haven't been able to discover it at all. I haven't put anything together. And that's, for me, the sign of a really good thriller, when you can completely pull the wool over your reader's eyes and completely blindside them with who did it at the end. Another one that I'm not very sure about is sci-fi. I have tried a couple of sci-fi books already. I have read Never Let Me Go by Katsu Ishiguro, and I have also read The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. Both of those are very heavily sci-fi based, and when I went into them, I didn't really know how I was going to react to them. Mainly because sci-fi is not a thing that I enjoy. Not just in books, I don't really enjoy sci-fi films. I don't really like or watch a lot of sci-fi TV shows such as Firefly or Star Trek or Star Wars. Those aren't really the kind of things that I would reach for. Much like my reading tastes, I would reach a lot more for rom-coms or romantic films or comedies. So when I discovered that these 2 books were actually ones that I was really enjoying, it's made me think a little bit more that this is a genre that I'm not too sure I enjoy. I need to kind of read some more of them to figure out how I really feel about it. So, if you have any sci-fi recommendations for me, please put them in the comments below, because that is a genre I definitely want to find more from. Question 6 is about a genre blend or kind of hybrid that you love. This one kind of ties in with question 5 in a way, because a genre blend that I found I've read 2 books from and really enjoyed both of them is contemporary sci-fi, where it takes place completely in our world. It's got all of the scenery that I would be used to. It's got everyday situations that I would be used to, but there is just that little tiny element that makes it a little bit more out there. But it's not fantasy, and it's not urban fantasy or high fantasy. It's something specifically science-y or science fiction-y that makes it feel not quite so contemporary. So 2 that I really loved in this were actually both YA books. The first one was Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. And this is about Jack, who meets a girl called Kate at a party that he's at, and he really likes her. He really falls for her. But Kate passes away. And when Kate dies, he is brought right back to the day that he and Kate met for the first time. So he takes it upon himself to kind of try and bend time, fix what's happening with Kate, try and save her life. And you go through these alternate realities of what's going to happen if she doesn't die, or what's going to happen if they hadn't met. I love that kind of thing, the alternate reality stuff. It's also something that I had seen in A Holidays by Christina Lauren, who is, again, one of my favorite contemporary authors. But this one felt not straight up contemporary, because it wasn't straight up contemporary. It did all take place in our world. It took place in, I think, Utah. This book also has a time travel element. So you're following May, whose family all come together at Christmas every single year in a cabin that they all rented in Utah. I think they've actually bought the cabin rather than rented it. But this year, they've decided to sell on the cabin. So this is the last time that they're ever going to see each other in the same way that they always do. And on the final day, when May is about to go back to her life and kind of come on from there, she makes a wish to the universe to just give her what's going to make her happy. Show her what's going to make her happy. She needs a sign for that, because it feels like her whole world is in flux right now. What happens then is that May's family are in a car accident on the way to the airport. Everything fades to black, and she wakes up back on the plane to Utah, to the cabin that they were all going to spend time with, and it's going back over the week that she had already just had. That's something that I really love. Going back over what you've already done, reliving your life, time travel elements. I think time travel is just something that I'm really interested in books. And another book that has a kind of a sci-fi element to it, but still set in our world, is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. I really liked the idea of the Death Mate app that this book had, where Mateo and Rufus spend their last 24 hours together, and even though you know what's going to happen because it's in the title, you are still so connected to these characters, and they bring you through our world, and there's so much that you see from our world. Like, there's cars driving around the place. They are in modern day New York. It's just got this extra app that we don't have at the moment. Those are the kind of very vague sci-fi elements that I like in books that are set in our world. So that is also a genre hybrid that I would like to try some more of. The final question is about a genre-defying book, but I'm going to change one of those letters slightly and make this a genre-defining book. And for that, I have gone with Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the first in the Brown Sisters series. I have a physical copy of this one, and I have the other two on my Kindle, one of which is an e-arc. I think for me, the reason that this is such a genre-defining book is how much representation that it has. It has POC rep, it has chronic illness representation, and I love the relationship that you have between Red and Chloe. The kind of sunshine heroine crossed with a really grumpy hero is something that I really love reading. But also as well, it's got some fantastic smut and some really good sexy scenes in this. This is something that I definitely recommend to a lot of people who are starting out on romance fiction and who don't really know where to go with it. I have got some really high hopes for the other two books in the series. I just, as I've said several thousand times, need to actually get to them and pick them up. So those were all of my answers to the genre book tag, and I'm going to tag 3 other booktubers whose thoughts on their genres I would love to hear. So I'm going to tag Anna from Read to Me at Midnight, India from What India Read, and Chloe from Chloe Reads Books. I would love to see what those people have got to say about the genres they read. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.